All right. Welcome back to Inner Peace, Better Health. I am your host, Eric, and today we are diving into a wonderful topic. Relationships are key to everything you have ever wanted and spirituality. Joining me is Robert White, a mentor, entrepreneur, author, and speaker who's helped over 1.3 million people transform their lives. With a wealth of experience across cultures and careers, Robert has a deep understanding of the power of relationships in shaping success. So, Robert, you are so welcome to our show.
Well, thank you, Eric. It's good to be with you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
But Robert, why do you believe relationships are the key to achieving everything we want in life?
I have a belief that comes out of a lot of personal experience, but also study, and studying a lot for a lot of years, including studying success and studying failure.
Mm-hmm.
And the conclusion I've come to is that what the world is missing, lacking, and would benefit from
Mm-hmm.
is increasing leadership at all levels of all organizations, beginning with family, certainly in our communities, certainly in our companies, just in every way, solving the world's problems, but also creating abundance and creating a great life, an extraordinary life. And
Mm-hmm.
the key to leadership, it seems to me, and I'm talking about leadership from wherever you are in an organization, wherever you are in a family. Sometimes we have a very dominant person in a family, and then we think, well, that's the leader, and we don't need to lead. And I've grown over the years to conclude that leadership is needed at every level, from the
Yeah.
receptionist in your company, of course, to the executive team, and
Yeah.
in families, that same situation, that we all need to express leadership. And
Yeah.
if that's true, I believe it is, but if
Mm-hmm.
it's true, it means that we have to figure out leadership. And
Yeah.
leadership is not management. Management was the theme for many, many years in my lifetime. And
Yeah.
management could be defined simply as the need to uh, plan, to organize, and control.
Mm.
Leadership is a very different thing. It's about creating something new and
Yeah.
bringing people along with you in that journey. And if you're creating something new and looking at the logic of that and trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out leadership and how do we express leadership,
Yeah.
anything that's new, the first thing you do is you turn to somebody with whom you have a great relationship. If you
Yeah.
think about anything new, I have a number of children, and one of my experiences, in America is the summer road trip. You put
Mm-hmm.
everybody into the car and stock up with snacks and drinks, and then go
Yeah.
someplace, a longer journey than you would normally take
Yeah.
during the vacation from school. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I learned in doing that for a number of years is I have two daughters that in age are only a year and a half apart. The and they are so radically different as to be very puzzling, actually,
Yeah.
because they are born by the same parents, they grew up in the same house, they have similar educational backgrounds, and yet they're radically different. That's just interesting in people in general, but certainly in families. But one of the things I learned is that when I think about that summer trip and doing something where I want it to be meaningful, I want it to be fun, I want it to be educational. I have all these goals for the summer trip. And
Mm.
one of the things that I've learned is that when I get kind of clear about what might work, what might be educational and fun,
Mm.
and engaging my family,
Yeah.
what I've learned is to not approach daughter number two, the younger daughter,
Yeah.
because from the moment she was born, she's been oppositional. Now, it's also her strength. She's
Mm.
extremely independent, very bright, very accomplished young woman now, a young adult woman. but she was
Mm,
like that when she was 2 years old. But she's automatically oppositional to anything new. And
yeah.
her sister, on the other hand, her older sister, is just an amazing process person when it comes to making decisions. And I've learned so much from her. I mean, I think I've
Mm,
taught her a bit, but I've learned so much from her. And that is that when I would say, here's my idea for the summer trip, the younger
mm,
child would say, no, no, that's terrible. I hate that.
mm,
The older one would say, that's interesting. Let me
mm,
think about it and do a little research, and I'll get back to you in a few days. Uh,
yeah.
so my point about this is that the something as simple as the summer trip is something new. And
Mm,
in whether it's in our family or in our businesses uh, that need leadership, it's
mm,
about creating something new.
mm,
And it's radically needed in a fast-paced, challenging world that we live in. So,
yeah.
who do we turn to when we have a new idea and we want to promote it? We turn to the person with whom we have the most productive relationship. And
Mm,
now, my example is that little simple one, but I've seen that same example show up in organizations. There are many of all types, uh, spiritual organizations, community organizations, political, and certainly in
yeah.
corporate life, whether it be a fledgling startup or a massive company. We're looking for more leadership, and that leadership
Mm,
is based on our ability in this fast-paced, somewhat mechanical sometimes world, technological world, is
yeah.
on the relationships that we have around us.
Mm, wow. Wow. So, do personal relationships or differ from professional ones in terms of the skills needed for success?
I think they show up differently. That's for sure. The personal ones tend to be more casual, while the business ones are, by their nature, more formal.
Mm,
But the idea is still the same because relationships are built on trust, whether that trust is in your family or in a personal one-on-one relationship or in an organization. So it argues for doing those things, saying those things, behaving in certain ways that build trust. Because
yeah.
if you think about it, there is no good relationship that lacks trust. So
Mm,
trust comes first. There's been a lot of research done on how to build trust. There are a number of good books written about it, but to think that we can create a great relationship without trust is folly. It just never works. The person with whom you have the best trust, uh, in effect, almost like in financial terms, your best trust account is that because you've made contributions to that
yeah.
trust account so that when you need to call on it, when you want to make a change, and again,
Mm,
whether it's at the family level or in business or in your
yeah.
community,
Yeah.
you turn to the people with whom you have the best relationship, and that's always determined by the highest level of trust.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I mean, trust is the key. Even relationships, trust is the key. Yeah, you're so right. And it's amazing how everything just connects back to our relationships. And yeah, wow. So how does spirituality play into the way that we connect with each others?
I mentioned when I thought about being with you this morning,
Uh-huh.
uh, I mentioned that I'm not a teacher of spirituality. I am a student,
Uh-huh.
and I like being in that role, even though I think I might have learned a few things about
Uh-huh.
a deeper level of spirituality.
Uh-huh.
I don't feel confident being the teacher. So I'm more the student than the teacher. Uh,
Yeah.
in my work with executives of companies, one of the things that I always look for is, do people have a daily practice
Mm-hmm.
to deepen their connection with their authentic self? So I
Mm-hmm.
don't, I'm in the United States, of course, and one of the
Yeah.
things that I've learned here is that you have to, and this will sound very non-spiritual, but it's very practical. You have to
Mm-hmm.
know your enemies or your potential enemies if you really want to accomplish anything great. And
Yeah.
uh, one of the things that I've had to confront, that I've built, founded, and led three companies that do high impact experiential learning for executives. I teach
Mm-hmm.
leadership. And uh, so when I'm doing that, I'll have people come to me and say, well, there's a spiritual underpinning to your work. Why don't you talk about it openly? And sometimes I answer, sometimes, frankly, I avoid the question. But if I'm going to answer, and in the space of this conversation, if you, in America at least, I don't know about in other cultures. Well, I do know something. I've lived abroad 23 years of my working life, so I have some cross-cultural knowledge. But
Yeah.
certainly in America, if you represent yourself as teaching something spiritual, you
Uh-huh.
become the enemy of certain fundamentalist religion people,
Yeah.
and then they are able to cause much mischief and get you
Mm-hmm.
off track of offering whatever it is you offer. So
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm recommending to these executive clients that
Yeah.
they have a daily practice to deepen their experience of their authentic self, which is
Mm-hmm.
it's wordplay. I mean, I understand it's not being as direct as I would like to be, but
Mm.
that if you do not develop that part of yourself, which has to do with your
Yeah.
purpose, your reason for living,
Yeah.
if you don't have a practice to
Mhm.
quiet yourself, then the
Yeah.
challenges that face all of us today, once we take a stand, we say, we want to accomplish something great. We want our company to be bigger. We want our family to be more happy and more satisfied. We want to make a
Mm.
contribution to our communities or to our nation. The moment you say that, you realize that reality shows up, and certainly physically.
Yeah.
It also shows up emotionally. How are we feeling? And
Mm.
what's our ability to manage what happens out of our emotional bodies? What about our mental growth, our learning, our knowledge? But
Yeah.
the fourth aspect of that is to deal with what's underneath all of that accomplishment, which is your growth as a spiritual being. And
Mm.
one of the teachings that has been beneficial to me, and I think to many other people, and I didn't
Yeah.
create this, I just learned from it, which is
Mm.
to make the distinction between doing and being.
Yeah.
And at least in this culture that I operate in today, doing dominates. What you can do seems to be the thing that people think of first when they think about success and satisfaction and joy. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Uh, what I'm representing and work with senior executives is to integrate your being with your doing. And out
Mm.
of that comes great accomplishment in my experience and in my clients' experience, but also joy and satisfaction. So
Yeah.
so that's what I work toward, is kind of clearing the way to create more connection to your authentic self.
Mm. Wow. Well, that's really amazing because I totally believe in the fact that your doing flows from your being. So yeah, that's really amazing. And I would want to ask you, what would be your advice to people who are stuck in a toxic relationship? Not romantic, but relationships in general, like friends, families, or what would be your advice?
I wish that I had uh, the kind of joke expression, I wish I had $1 for every person I've met that's in some kind of a toxic relationship. Um,
Mm,
I think the key, first of all, is to realize that you cannot change the other person.
yeah. So,
If you have some skills, interpersonal skills, perhaps you could create a space for them to learn what they need to learn in this journey. But you can't
yeah.
change the other person. You can only work on you. And
Yeah.
uh, I find that most people that start talking about a toxic relationship, and maybe they don't use the word toxic, they might say
Mm,
difficult relationship, or that person is
mm,
stubborn, or that person is dishonest, or that person is doesn't care about me or other people. They express it in many ways. I think all of those ways do fit under the rubric of it's toxic in terms of its impact on you and on the world. So working on that seems to me to be part of for each of us, part of our journey. But the place we have to work is on us. Uh, I think often, if not always, the
mm,
relationships we create are mirrors of what's next for us. The
mm,
contemporary of Freud is Jung, and I'm not a psychologist, but I certainly try to learn from some of these people. And from Jung, you learn that all intimate relationships, and that can be romantic, or an intimate relationship can be
mm,
being part of an executive team that's up to something, that really wants to accomplish something. That's actually a very intimate relationship. In
yeah.
fact, if it isn't, you're severely handicapped
Mm,
in terms of accomplishment. And what Jung said is that these people that we might think they're kind of accidentally put in our path, put in our life, and maybe even that they're blocking accomplishment of what, or blocking a certain level of joy and satisfaction. And, but Jung says that all those people that are in front of us in terms of an intimate relationship were put there by God to be a mirror for our own growth and development, that they are a way to check where we are and what we need to work on in terms of our next step in building healthier and more productive relationships. I think that
mm,
movement from pointing a finger at the other person or at the team or at the political party or whatever it is that you say is stopping you, uh,
yeah.
there is zero value in that. Uh, I, I, I heard a motivational speaker many years ago
Mm-hmm.
point out that, when you are pointing that finger at someone else or the situation or the environment,
Yeah.
that there are three fingers pointing back at you.
Mm, yeah.
And I just thought, in a simple way, that's not a profound statement or academically attractive, but it's in a practical sense to remember that we are the source of our experience and
Yeah.
that we can only create from our being in addition to our doing. So, what is it that we need to work on in a toxic relationship? Because you can't change the other person, and also what's in the past is in the past. You can't change that. So, what can you do in terms of, as they said back in the '60s, very
Mm,
famous book was called "Be Here Now."
yeah.
What do you need to do with you to be really present, and also present in the sense of your vision for the future of that relationship, of
Yeah.
that organization? And are you coming from being really present, really seeing reality, and getting out of your story about something, or particularly your judgment about that other person or that situation? What have you
Yeah.
done to take a look at you and your state, your consciousness around that? And
Mm,
when I'm talking like that, I'm doing it in very practical terms because that's the world that I live in. But I'm totally aware that I'm really talking about a deeper spiritual sense of self. Kind of,
Mm,
that expression of that, the word self with a capital S. Uh,
yeah.
the authentic self, what's underneath our personality, our behavior, our yearnings, all of those things. What's underneath for us? What's our real purpose? What the my friend Arjun Sen is a an immigrant to America who's been hugely successful as an executive and now as a mentor to executives. And he came to one of my programs and I learned something from him. An expression that he uses. He says that you are one of one.
Yeah.
You're actually that special. Nobody
Yeah.
else on the planet has the same fingerprint, as an example, and nobody is exactly like you. And you have something to
Yeah.
contribute. You have something to
Yeah.
perhaps handle in your life. Uh, I
Yeah.
I do a weekly email, a free service. I've done it for over 15 years, called an Extraordinary Minute, where I do a quote and then I do a few comments on it, but it's all designed to be read in 1 minute or less. It's called an Extraordinary Minute,
Yeah.
and it's just like a little snack, a mental, emotional, uh, I guess to some degree, spiritual snack once a week. And uh,
Yeah.
so I was thinking early this morning about my January 1st message. It's published by coincidence, it's published every Wednesday. And this next Wednesday is in the Western world, the new year. And so I was trying to think
Uh,
of something interesting and clever. But what I started out with was talking about one of the things that I've learned over the past year is you listen to some of these great teachers, like
mm,
The Buddhists say that all life is suffering. And then
mm,
I'm a big fan of the Canadian psychologist uh, Jordan Peterson. And Jordan says that life is tragic and that
mm,
the job is to figure out how to handle the tragedy of life. And
mhm,
of course, the existentialists say that life is hard and then you die. That's kind of a very, very
mm,
abrupt statement. But all of those
yeah.
things, could be interpreted as negative. But
Yeah.
something that I've learned myself over the past year is to change the frame on that, because I think all of those things are true. There's truth in all three of those statements.
Yeah.
The challenge is, how do we receive them? Is that
Yeah.
part of how we describe reality? I wish everything was sunshine and flowers, but it's
Mhm,
not. Life
yeah.
shows up and sometimes in very difficult ways. And when it does, that's when I think you have to be able to look deeper. And there
Mm,
better be something there when you do that. And that
yeah.
comes from a daily practice of meditation or prayer or reading or a walk in the woods, whatever it is that gets you to be quiet and to
Yeah.
listen to guidance that perhaps you cannot explain logically. But to do that, you have to quiet this noisy world that we have created.
Yeah.
And so, my recommendation to executives is find some practice, something that works for you. I have one client who swims every day,
Mm,
every day. He
mm,
has that's his way to be quiet. I have others that go for a walk in the woods. I have others that stop at a temple and
mm,
offer a prayer of gratitude and of hope. Uh,
mm,
I have people who read. One, not an executive, or not a client of mine, but a resource. We represented his company for sales training for many years, but he reads the Holy Bible cover to cover once each year, which
yeah.
means it means he has to read a certain amount every morning,
Mm,
and that's his way to be quiet and to be with profound thought, and to get him to measure himself against those words. So I don't care what people do. I'm not invested in any of that. But what has worked for me is to have a daily practice of becoming quiet.
Mm. That's really wonderful. I mean, it's we get so confused and we get so busy with the constant pings of our busy lives, and we get so caught up in our own things that we forget how important it is for us to um, just sit in silence and actually remember who we are. And I really believe it's wonderful. Well,
Well,
thank you so much.
what attracted me to what you're doing is, the first on your little logo, the first two words are inner peace,
Mm,
and I think that look, I prefer to be successful
mm,
financially. I prefer to accomplish things. I have preferences, but
mm,
underneath all of that, when I look at my life, what I'm looking for is to grow closer to God, to have inner peace.
uh,
And sometimes I meet that goal and sometimes I don't.
yeah. Wow, that's really wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Robert, for such a rich conversation today. To our listeners, remember that your relationships shape your life. Take one thing from today's discussion and put it into action, whether it's setting boundaries, nurturing self love, or deepening your spiritual connection. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend and leave a review. Don't forget to subscribe to Inner Peace Better Health. Until next time, this is your host, Eric, signing off. Take care of yourselves and your relationships.